Good evening. You are here with us at the August meeting of the Government Operations Committee. First order of business, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our June meeting.
So moved. Second.
All right, got a motion from Commissioner Link, second from Commissioner Davenport. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, minutes approved. Okay. So I will kick it over to Assistant Manager Edwards to talk us through the agenda for today briefly.
All right, thank you, Chair Parker. Good to be here this evening. Thanks for staff for joining as well. Today we're hoping to finish our conversations related to the animal control ordinance update, and Animal Services Director Crystal Barber is here to discuss that. We hope to have at least 15 minutes at the end to begin discussions related to the new charge we received from Mayor Gertz, focused on short-term rentals, and we can begin that discussion, give some context. Attorney Hines is here to give some of the history about where we've been, and then we can hear from the GOC about where you'd like us to go and how you'd like us to prepare for the next GOC meeting on that topic. But with that, if everybody's ready, I'll kick it over to Crystal, and she's got some of the, I think it's only 4 or 5 pages of the ordinance update, but it's some of the meatiest and will probably garner the most discussion. So she's ready to go.
Thank you very much. Let me see if I can figure out how to share my screen again. Zoom tight. Okay, so I believe we left off on outdoor sales prohibition, and essentially this would help us stop people from giving dogs or cats away in the middle of the road or at places like Walmart. So the goal would hopefully be that those animals would come into animal services so that they can get properly vetted. And then it would not apply to people that are personally transferring or 4-H or people that have, or businesses that have a license by the GDA. And then we would have the authorization to impound an animal that was being transferred in violation of that section. Did anyone have any questions on that section? And that was, just so everybody's on the same page, it's 4.132 and it's outdoor sales prohibition.
So I had a question.
Sure.
So, like, let's say I'm on Facebook and I'm like, hey, I got this cute little puppy active and I sell it, but I meet you at Walmart, a place of establishment. Would that be considered as well?
So, and Sherry, I don't know if you want to weigh in.
I was going to say, I need to think about that for 1 second. That's a great question.
So I think the Craigslist part would actually be covered under that dog and cat for sale section. They would have to be vetted, but I mean, essentially, I guess if they are meeting. That's a good question.
No, I think you're right that could be an unintended consequence of the way this is drafted. Offer. I mean, I guess, yeah, because it does say transfer consideration, so that would be sell. So, remind me of the fact pattern. Were you saying like a free puppy or? Well, I guess it doesn't matter. The way it's currently written, because it says for any person to transfer for consideration, so basically for some sort of value. If you were selling your puppy and you agreed to meet in the Walmart parking lot, I think the way this is written would be to say that no, you can't do that. If you were giving it away, that wouldn't be transfer for consideration. It wouldn't be offer to transfer for consideration. Wouldn't be related to a commercial purpose.
Okay.
I don't think this section would have a problem if it was just giving away. But I will also say that the likelihood of the scenario that you're talking about coming to our attention is probably slim. I think what we're mostly worried about is the people who set up and are selling puppies at Walmart, or not necessarily Walmart, but just like large parking lots where they know that there's going to be a lot of pedestrian traffic.
Yes, and I will say, I myself was at Walmart like 3 weeks ago, and I actually saw somebody selling, or giving away puppies in the parking lot. So, yeah. So it actually does happen.
I'm sorry. Go on, Crystal.
No, I was going to say it actually does happen in Athens. When we were drafting this, I was like, I wonder how often that actually happens. It does. It was at the Lexington Walmart. Like 9 o'clock at night, we were school shopping. So it does for sure happen.
Could you reiterate, like, what concern of yours this is meant to address? There was something about people kind of, like, going around animal services.
So
that's really what the drive was here.
So essentially, a well-known breeder is probably not going to meet you at Walmart, right? You're going to meet them at the home. You're going to get a certificate. This is for people who, A, have litters that they didn't mean to have and probably are not vetted, and backyard breeders that maybe aren't selling and they just want to get them off quick. So they don't want to do any of the vetting. They don't want to have to take them to the vet to get them shots and all of that stuff. So the hope is that if you're not able to go to places like Walmart to offload your puppies, you would bring them to animal services so animal services can get them vetted, spayed and neutered, microchipped, rabies vaccinated, and to good homes.
Yeah, and
that makes sense to me. Go on, Terry.
If I can really say, there is actually an exception that largely covers what you were getting at, Commissioner Davenport. So if we look at B3, it says a prearranged transfer between a dog, a cat, or a domestic rabbit seller and a specific purchaser that takes place at a police department, sheriff's office, or other similar peace office facility during daylight hours. So, I mean, I guess the idea is that if you need to meet up, that's a safe place to meet up that avoids some of those issues. It is ironic. A friend of mine just had this happen where she was at a store like a Walmart, I'm not actually sure where, and ended up getting a free puppy whose mouth was burnt from an electrical cord, I guess, that it had bitten. It's the same sort of idea. Like, a person doesn't want to take care of this puppy's medical problems. They just want to get rid of it. And I guess the local store is an easy way to dump it on someone.
Yeah, I would say while this section might be imperfect, I do think it does accomplish what y'all are going for and trying to dissuade or, discourage those types of transfers from happening. Commissioner Davenport, do you have additional concerns here, or are you okay with this?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right.
I had a question, Chair. I'm sorry, I've had my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see that. Sorry, Mike.
No worries. Patrick does have a good question. I mean, and I'm kind of a bit hesitant about this section. I mean, certainly if somebody has, not everybody knows to go to animal control if they don't want the dogs or the cats or whatever animal they're giving away. And if they're looking to give it away, that, I guess in some ways that's humane instead of just leaving them on the side of the road somewhere to where they're not going to get taken care of. And certainly, in Patrick's scenario, if somebody wants to arrange to meet at a Walmart, if they're selling a dog that somebody wants to buy, they don't know it's going to be illegal to do that, but it's still illegal, even though it may not be on our radar. It's still illegal, and it's still in our ordinance. So just because I guess I'm responding to Sherry's thing that that may not happen much, but if it does happen, it's still illegal and it's in our ordinance. So y'all see where I'm going. I mean, this seems a bit, I don't know what the middle ground is, but this seems a bit onerous because I just don't, I don't see people taking stuff to the animal shelter when I don't really see it that much at Walmart or wherever else. Maybe I'm just not paying attention, but I don't know how often it happens and what concerns it raises. My 2 thoughts. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I have possibly so getting at that and understanding what Commissioner Hamby is saying, I think B3 does for the most part say this, is legal, but it does say it has to happen specifically at a police department, sheriff's office, or other similar police officer facility, which I understand that's probably getting more at, something I know that we're trying to encourage people to do all around, which is, just to go to a safe place when you're meeting somebody you don't know and doing exchanges so that you're not robbed or in a dangerous situation. Could we possibly change that wording to pre-arranged transfer between a dog, a cat, or domestic rabbit seller and a specific purchaser, and something about and we encourage that transfer to take place at a police department, yada yada yada, instead of, because as Commissioner Hamby says, and I think he's right, that most people aren't going to be aware of the specific elements that they have to do it only in one of those places. Well, I think we should encourage it. It is a little weird that it's absolutely illegal if you're doing it one of the places that's not there and you're just not aware.
Yeah, I would refer back to Sherry. I mean, I think that would be an okay change, but Sherry, would the wording be okay?
I think we certainly could do that. I think I'm always a little bit leery of putting language in ordinance about encouraging behavior because it doesn't mean anything in the sense that we don't have any ability to demand or encourage anyone to do anything. So I think I would just encourage you to just strike that last portion and just say except by a prearranged transfer between a seller and the purchaser. Yep. I can't think of any other ordinance where we mention something that's encouraged but not required. I wouldn't want to create
confusion. That makes sense to me.
And maybe we can just simply, in the same way that we do for other things, like I know we have signs at the police department stuff saying this is like a safe transfer location. Maybe it is I don't know, any kind of literature and stuff that we have through animal services. Maybe that could just be in there as a suggestion in the literature then.
No, absolutely.
I
have a comment. Considering that there might be a whole lot of, ignorance of this law, if it gets passed, maybe it would be worth reaching out to major retail establishments, just making them aware of the law so that, they can make people who might show up with a litter of puppies aware of it and ask them to tell them to contact animal control or tell them that they can make prearranged transfers at the police station. I mean, I think it might be worth doing a little outreach and educating of the public. And I think the most direct way to do that would be through management of those establishments where these things typically occur. And I do see the reasoning behind it. I mean, I've heard stories about people picking up these free or cheap puppies at these kind of places, and they might use them for bait dogs. You would think that would be less likely if they were at a police station.
Yeah. No,
I would say it's also just. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say I think that's very something that we could do is educate, especially I think the larger retailers, like for some reason Walmart, I think it's because it's open long hours, and they get a really high volume of traffic. So I know people know that they're going to probably get rid of their pets there. So I think we could certainly educate the management at those facilities.
No, this wouldn't apply to somewhere like a Pet Supplies Plus or somewhere like that, would it?
No, that is that's under B1.
B1, that's what I thought. Thank you. Yeah. I had a friend adopt a pet from there, and that dog hit the lottery. ended up having the best life ever.
So I guess I've heard two ideas here is striking the part about peace officer facility from 4B3 or continuing to include that language but having it paired with an educational component whereby folks are informed that this is the proper way to go about it. As well, retail establishments are educated on the fact that these should not be allowed on their premises. Is that correct? Are those sort of the two different things we're looking at here?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'd rather leave it in there, but make sure that there is an educational effort.
Yeah, I think that's what we would plan on, is that after we would tweak it after purchaser, and then just plan on once this gets passed or when it's getting close to that, we would just educate at least as many as the major retailers as we can.
That sounds good to me. I also was thinking about how generally any sort of like transfer with someone you met on the internet, it's very encouraged to do so at a peace officer facility, police department, or something like that, just for the safety of the folks involved in the agreement. Since you never know who you're meeting online. So I would be cool with that as well. Any additional comments or suggestions? Okay, let's keep it moving.
Okay, so
I'm sorry, real quick. So what was the decision, the consensus? We just gonna leave it?
I think the consensus is to leave 4B3 as is written, but just ensuring that there's an educational component such that folks know that this is the procedure, and retail establishments are educated so that they can discourage violations of the ordinance on their property.
Thank you.
So we are going to leave it the way it's written here?
I thought we were striking after purchaser.
Yeah, because
I guess we may remain divided on this question.
I do fear that you're going to have folks who are just honestly overwhelmed and trying to give their animals away. I mean, I've had people in a parking lot also try to give me puppies, and I think there's overwhelmed. And I guess most people are not going to at all know the specifics of this code, and that's technically going to be illegal. And I feel like it's probably something we want. I guess I never want us to have where we are condemning something that we probably think is a good thing that's happening, which is somebody who can't care for these animals giving them somebody who can.
I agree.
So I think it'd be best to strike it after purchaser, but still have that informational capacity of telling them to do it in a safe way in one of these places, but not making it illegal to do it anywhere that's not one of these places.
I completely agree.
That makes sense to me. Yeah, that makes sense to me too. So is that good with everyone?
Can we get feedback from Sherry because she's giving a confused look?
Thank you. No, I just wanted to clarify one thing, and I don't know that it will change your thinking, but this is only for outdoor sales. It is not giveaways. I know we were talking about like a giveaway hypothetical, and I think I confused everyone there, so I apologize, but this is just for sales.
So you can have your prearranged meeting, and if there's no money involved, no matter what, you can meet wherever you want.
All of this talks about transfer for consideration, leasing. I don't know if you'd lease a dog, but maybe a breeder, and commercial purposes. So this is not about giveaways.
Oh, okay. So giveaways are legal anywhere and everywhere then?
Unless there's another section I don't remember, and I do apologize. It has been a while since I've looked at this part of this section. Crystal, do you remember anything else that would cover that?
So I think the only thing would be the puppy and kitten, where they would just have to have a history of the vaccines and the vet certificate.
Yep, absolutely. So, but this section, yeah.
Yeah. So, because a lot of the people that do go to Walmart and I'm using Walmart as an example just because that happens to be, I think, the most common because it's just open so many hours, is most of them are asking for some small amount of money. A lot of times it's not much, but they are asking for something. So generally they're not giving them away. They're selling them for a reduced rate or, some small fee. If they were giving them away, then yes, they would not be in violation of this.
Okay, then I strike my concern. If this is simply talking about sales, transfers and getting sales, then I'm fine with the way B3 is written.
Mike, thoughts? You're the other
Yeah, I'm gonna
important
have to stew.
seconder of this.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to stew on this one a bit because again, I mean, people that are even selling them are trying to, I think, do right by giving the dogs a better place. If they're, I mean, they're trying to. I don't know that. I'm trying to think the best of people. So I guess they could just easily not sell them and put them on the side of the street and not worry about it at all, and go from there. But I don't know. Let me think on it if that's all right, Chair. I don't know. We're not going to decide today, are we? Or are we?
My hope was to pass this out of committee today, potentially.
Oh, well.
So would you like to stew on it throughout the rest of this meeting and perhaps get back to us at its conclusion?
Well, if I need to, I don't know. I'm not going to hold it up too much. If I don't feel comfortable with it, I can just vote against it at the commission meeting. So.
Or do a CBA.
All right.
I see what they're trying to do, but I just understand, just the nature of things, and I think I do, at least. I don't know, maybe I don't, but I
mean, from what I see, the end game is to encourage these folks to bring them to animal control, to assure that these puppies get vaccinated, that they're not carrying any diseases, that they've been properly treated. I think that it seems like that's the end game rather than the willy-nilly, possibly unleashing ill animals into the population that could be treated and become great pets. So I feel like, this language, and it discourages this kind of activity for that purpose. And if there's proper education of management at some of these places where this stuff occurs, those folks should be encouraged to tell these folks, please bring these puppies to animal control. We know you're trying to, we know you can't get rid of them, but this is the way to do it. Take them to animal control.
And I'm sure in an ideal world that would happen, and I'd love to see that happen. But I'm just. Anyway, we can move on. Thanks, Chair.
I think that would be great. I think at this point, if we need to revisit whether the degree to which this is a sticking point as we approach determining whether this passes out of committee today, we can. But for the time being, let's go on to section 4133.
Okay, so section 4133 is dog and cat licensing. And then I do have a small PowerPoint presentation. Are you able to see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Just want to make sure I have it on the right screen. Okay, so obviously this is a big topic, so I just wanted to make sure I hit some really high.
Crystal, real quick, I saw it for a second, then I went back to your Word document. So.
Oh, okay, hold on. Oh, okay. Okay, do you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I just wanted to go over some really highs and some high points, and then Sherry has a couple talking points, and then that way we can, get into the meat and potatoes and really discuss any concerns or questions that you guys have. So opportunities related to a licensing program. So obviously our goal is to get stray dogs and cats home. So in 2019, only 35.6% of stray dogs and a horribly low 5.6% of cats that were impounded as strays were reclaimed by their owners. Few of them had ID, and then obviously even less, more of them had microchips, but not a whole bunch. So the whole point is licensing will hopefully help owners keep licenses and tags on their dogs and cats so that they can get returned with hopefully a microchip as well. Ownership can also be hard to prove if we're talking about disputes or violations. It's really easy to say, not my dog, not my cat. So licensing, which is helped by encouraging microchipping, also stores the pet description, the pet name, the age, and then also it has a microchip that's registered to an owner. So that also helps us verify real ownership in cases of true abandonment. And then right now, there's not really a central repository for rabies vaccination information. So if someone gets bit at 2 a.m, we have no way to verify that that dog is current or that cat is current if their owner doesn't have a vaccination certificate, which happens quite a bit. Most people don't have that information on them. So one nice thing would all of the rabies certificates would come to animal services, and we would be able to have a system that we would be able to go into and verify that an animal's been vaccinated. So that pet could possibly stay at home for the quarantine instead of having to be impounded. And the victim would know, okay, I'm safe. This dog or cat is vaccinated. The state law would also, for requiring licensing for people breeding and selling more than a litter at a 12-month period. So there's a proposed litter license that would help keep track of that. That's something that currently the GDA, the Department of Ag, has a really hard time doing. This would hopefully help us help Ag, and also obviously, help people understand that if you're going to have more than 1 litter a year, you need to have that license from the Department of Ag. And then people who don't own pets currently bear an equal share of the cost of rounding up and housing pets. So licensing helps place a financial burden more on the people who own pets instead of the taxpayers in general. Did anyone have any questions on that slide before I go on? No. Okay. So how it would work is any cat or dog over 3 months that lives in Athens-Clarke County would be required to have a license. The license would be directly tied to the rabies vaccination. So the license yearly would expire when the rabies vaccination expired. The reason you do that is so that if they have a current license, they have a current rabies vaccination. The state law already requires rabies vaccinations at this age, so we're just trying to make it into the county ordinance so that we can verify that stuff on a county level. There would be a 60-day grace period for registering a new pet and for residents moving into the county. The possibility for fees being waived for low-income individuals. And this topic, Sherry had some information she wanted to share, so I'm going to turn it over to Sherry for a moment.
Excellent. So this is the section about the fees, is that correct?
Yes, this would be for talking about the possibility of waiving fees for low-income individuals.
And so I think Josh and Judd and I had a chance to talk about this today, and I think that while very well intentioned and while we would understand why a department might be interested in doing this, we would recommend against it. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is that I think the fees are going to be very low. And so for the most part, generally speaking, if a person is a pet owner, they can probably afford to pay these fees. I think like we talked about microchip was going to be like $5 or something along those lines, but Crystal, please correct me. In either case, the difficulties of waiving fees for low-income individuals is that you have to be able to try to set a clear guideline for what that threshold is and what it is not. And you'd have to make sure that staff are consistently enforcing that. Secondly, you'll need to think about how people would prove that they qualify, which is obviously ripe for abuse. But certainly could create a situation, at least in theory, where staff would be asking for sensitive financial information that we may not want staff to be discussing with members of the public generally, if we certainly don't have to. The thing that is most analogous is, at least that I can think of, is the public defender's office when you have to go to qualify, and sometimes people have to provide tax returns. I don't think that's the kind of information that Animal Services particularly wants to be privy to. It also just creates a really significant administrative burden that isn't there currently. So I'm not saying that it is legally impossible to set up a system, but I would highly recommend against it. And I think it just creates a little bit of an equal protection issue in the sense that there are lots of different things in the government that involve fees that we don't waive or we don't attempt to address because of income. So it certainly opens a door to making a lot of complexity across multiple other department levels if we're going to do that in this situation.
Patrick?
Yeah, so since we I have two questions. So since we're on this topic, so what would be the definition of low income versus indigent? Because when I was reading this, I was thinking like homeless people who have pets, they support animals, they care for them. They may not have the funds to get a microchip. Hopefully, and I'm not familiar with the nonprofits out there who are out there to help them. But all going back to the license period would be directly tied to the rabies vaccination. Should we go ahead and just put the 1 year? I do believe there are like 2-3 year rabies vaccinations that may be out there as well. I could be wrong on that.
No, that's a great point. There are 3-year rabies vaccinations, so that's certainly a possibility. Although you can't get it, you have to have a 1 year before you can get be eligible to get the 3 year. In terms of if we wanted to carve out an exception for homeless individuals, I think that would be a much easier carve out. But you're absolutely right to ask the question of what qualifies as low income or what qualifies as indigent. I can tell you that from the public defender's concept, they have always used the federal poverty guidelines, and the way that works is they actually have a scale, like a chart, and so that varies based on how many dependents you have in your home, and in that particular situation, what type of charge you have. So, I mean, we certainly could go down that path of using the federal poverty guidelines, having a chart, but then you're having to have all of these pretty lengthy conversations or applications about finances and how many dependents live in your home and are you married. So it's a pretty complex system.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I was going to ask about the 3-year rabies vaccination as well. And also, when I get my pets vaccinated, it's at their annual visit to our vet. So would private veterinarians have some responsibility for, communicating with animal control about the licensing? Or I'm just trying to figure out how this works when you get your license renewed and how, especially if you're at a private veterinarian, when you're getting that rabies vaccination that would trigger the renewed license.
So it definitely depends on what company we would utilize. I hadn't got there yet, but the next slide we do talk about an example of a company called Pet Data. It's just one example, but yes. So the rabies vaccination can be a 1 year or 3 year. Your license can also be a 1 year or 3 year. So essentially, the company would charge us an X amount for 1 year and then an X amount for 3 year. We would charge the resident whatever charge, and that difference would go towards the general fund or an animal services capital project or something. So yes, there is definitely the ability to do a 1 year and a 3 year. Just like if you move to the county in the middle of your 3 year, you would only be charged for the remaining part of that rabies vaccination. So you wouldn't be charged for a 3 year because you're not going to get a whole 3 year. You would, let's say you had a year left, you would only get charged for what's remaining available on your rabies vaccination. And then I apologize, you had a second question and it went out of my mind.
Yeah, it's about the role of private veterinarians and the communication with animal control and private veterinarians and who collects the money towards the licensing.
So there's many, again, it kind of depends on the company we end up with, but there's different ways. They will send the vaccine information to us so that we can get it into the universal system, that way we have it all on file. And they would have the option to sell the tags directly from there. They don't have to. That's kind of would be optional. But I will say if they did that, then they wouldn't have to purchase their own tags to give out because they would have the county tags to give out. So there are different ways we can do that. It doesn't have to be a one for all. That's something that whatever company we choose to go with for the third party vendor does help us set that part up.
Okay, so as far as like the private veterinarians, would they have the ACC tags on hand in their office? And when they give, renew the rabies vaccine every year, they would then get into the private vendor system and indicate that they've renewed the rabies tag and this fee has been paid. And then how does that fee get to ACC? And does the private veterinarian get any compensation for the extra work put into that?
So those are all things that I think we have to maybe finish out talking about. Yes, there's ways that you can give them an incentive for helping. $1 to $2 a license, so that takes care of their time and effort for doing that. They can do it most companies, most third-party vendors, you can do it two different ways. You can do it where the company or the vet's office has their own login and they can sell the tag. The third-party vendor, because most of the vendors that we've looked at offer like fun tags. So they're not just boring. They don't look horrible on your pet, because that's one of the complaints is, I don't want a metal tag on my pet. The ones with pet data, just using them as an example, you can get a different tag with all the same information for every holiday for your pet if you wanted. So for people that like to, change out their dog's collars for seasons, they can have a Christmas one at Christmas and a Halloween one at Halloween. So they take the basic information and the payment, and then they'll go on to pet data, like as the customer, and they'll fill in all that information so that Fluffy gets, they make sure that Fluffy gets the tag that Fluffy needs with all of Fluffy's information. And then, yes, that goes into a fund or an account that is set up, and then pet data gets their chunk and the county gets its chunk.
And I think just to add here, if the GOC is interested in staff moving forward in this, then we would have to go through a purchasing process, and there would be details we'd have to go through and iron out. But what we're looking for is, in general, is this something y'all are interested in? Is this something that you'd want us to further pursue? And then we might have more clarifying questions as we go.
I think that this probably needs a bit more public input, because I think we're going to hear a lot of public input about this. It kind of reminds me of rental registration, except with pets. And I don't know how you're going to enforce it, Crystal. I don't know what the fee will be. How are you going to, what are folks going to do? Walk around and ask to see the dog's license or the cat's license? It's a bit much to take in right now, and I think it deserves a little bit light of day for the public to look at before we move forward on it.
Tim?
Yeah, thank you. I would say, yeah, I have to agree. I think this is a lot, and I'm honestly, as a whole, I'm not completely sure how I feel about it. I'd want to know a lot more about the repercussions of what would happen if there was individuals who didn't have licensed animals, and it was simply out of ignorance, not of any kind of, intentional or accidental harm. And I will say that I think I would be completely unsupportive without some kind of low-income waivers program combined into this. So I guess what my recommendation would be to just take this section out, to consider it separately, move forward everything else that we're talking about, and have this kind of set aside as a separate discussion that we can come back to. Because I do think I understand why it's being asked for, but I think it's a big deal, and it's kind of a game changer when it comes to our code here with animal services.
That relates to my question. Do parts of this section then have implications for later sections? Essentially, could we do what Commissioner Denson suggested with regards to moving forward with other parts on which we have agreement and revisit this? I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I wanted to see if that is possible.
I think that's completely possible. Sherry, just making sure that you don't see anything that.
Yeah. I don't remember there being any big overlap. And I think, when we were all putting this together, I think everyone was aware that this is certainly a potentially controversial topic. So.
Absolutely. And then I did want to, just to finish up, just so that you guys have some more information to think about. Obviously, we don't want to make it punitive. We want residents to come into compliance. And right now, if we go to somebody's house and they don't have a current license, that generally means they don't have a current license tag from their vet, which means they don't have a rabies shot, which is a violation of the state ordinance and our county ordinance. So they are getting cited. They would get cited here essentially in the same way. It would just be tied to the rabies vaccine and the county license. The only other thing I was going to mention is we obviously would recommend using a third-party vendor just because we don't have the staff here to do all of that data entry that it would take to do a licensing program. But just so that you guys can kind of think about, the cost for a licensing for a 1-year pet would be $4.20. And this is just for the example of pet data. All companies are going to be a little different, but this was kind of around the price point. And then $8.20 for a 3-year. So we would recommend the fee be for altered and microchipped animals. So that's animals that can't reproduce, that have a microchip that hopefully we're going to get back home, for the cost to at least cover that. So, maybe $5 and $9. But the cost for unaltered, unmicrochipped animals, which are essentially the animals that are causing animal services to have so many pets here because they're breeding and there's no way to get them home, so then we have to hold them longer, for those costs to be higher. So, maybe it would be 15 or 25, something like that. And then the funds could help assist, future capital projects for capital services or for animal services. And then one of the goals, which is part of our strategic plan, would also be holding microchip clinics at low or no cost, so that we could offer them a lower fee, because there would also be the opportunity to get microchipped. So just so that you guys have that to think about as well, because I do know that it's a big topic.
Patrick?
Thank you. Crystal, she went over the question I was going to ask, because I'm trying to understand Hamby's and Denson's concern, because if you get a pet, ultimately we're here because we want to make sure that people are good stewards with the animals that they have. So, but I understand some of the concerns around the license and especially the fees. But if you get a pet, you're automatically, especially if you get it from ACC, you're already you automatically are going to be required to get it vaccinated, microchipped, and this is just and the state already will cite you for not having an animal that you claim is yours. So I don't know, maybe from work, it makes sense to me, but I don't mind holding it, but just wanted more feedback. Maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah, and then hopefully.
Commissioner Link, I don't think we've heard from you yet. Oh, I'm sorry. Is that you, Crystal?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Crystal.
Okay. Yeah, go for it, and then I'll see if Commissioner Link has anything.
Okay. Hopefully our goal here would be any animal adopted from here or reclaimed from here would automatically get a license as part of the reclaim fee and the adoption fee. And then we also would hope that the Humane Society, that we could talk to our partners there, and anybody adopted from there, it would also become part of their adoption process as well. So everybody that's getting adopted from a shelter standpoint in the county would already come with a license for the remainder of their vaccination.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I wholly support a licensing program. I feel like this is the most direct way to assure that these animals are being properly cared for and to discourage, folks from not fixing their animals. But I do see this as cumbersome. I do feel like it does need some public input from veterinarians who might be kind of middlemen in this transaction. And also, I would like to hear back from some of our animal welfare groups, how they might be involved in encouraging this and educating the public or covering fees or things like that. I really want to see this go forward, but it might need some more tweaking. And by having that public input, it could also help educate the public. I think that if we were to go ahead and pass this aspect of the ordinance next month, it could cause a lot of headache.
So it seems like, well, let me see if anyone else has something. It seems like we have some consensus on wanting to hold this section, but potentially, I guess the part remains to be seen if we want to go ahead and try to move forward with the rest of it while allowing time for this to perhaps be subject to a survey that's circulated to stakeholders in this issue and for us to return to that at a later time. Does that sound good to everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, I got thumbs up for Tim, yes, Melissa. Patrick is staring me down. All right, that works with me too. So I think that we're okay to move on to the next section and direct staff to solicit some public input on that issue from veterinarians and I guess some animal welfare stakeholders.
So one thing we'll do, Chair, then, just to make sure I heard you all correctly, is we'll work with our internal staff to develop a survey and an engagement strategy. And then would you like us to bring that survey back for y'all's review at the next meeting before pushing it out and have further discussion, or would you like us to move forward with that survey?
I trust y'all, but any thoughts from others?
I mean, I trust y'all too. It might be helpful to just email it out to us in case there's anything that stands out or any additional input we might come up with.
All right. Thank you.
Sounds good. All right. Section 4134.
Yes, animal abuse, neglect, and fighting. This really helps. So right now, there's a lot of issues with us being able to have anybody cite anybody for violations that aren't quite at state level. So if we have a dog, but it's not quite the state level, or maybe the police don't think that it's the state level, or maybe we didn't get quite what we needed to prove the state level, this helps us be able to do a lot of that for a lot of different things, for intentional or causing unnecessary suffering, the beating, torturing, tormenting. Some of this would go to state level, but this helps us as animal service officers to be able to actually have somebody get a citation for something that's not at the state level. And there are lots of times where we would love to issue a citation for something, but it just doesn't quite meet the state level. So this would help us on those cases that are in between. And Sherry, I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
I was trying to think of a particular example recently, and I'm drawing a blank, but that's exactly right. I cannot tell you the number of times we've had situations that were absolutely deplorable where the police are saying, it's bad, but we're not sure this is really cruelty, or we think there's an issue proving cruelty, or we could have potentially proven something under this ordinance and we're stuck charging them with the dog didn't have a rabies tag. It just doesn't allow us to address the underlying behavior. And so we're trying to fill that gap.
I've got an example, if you don't mind, Chair. So if a dog were in a pen, has a doghouse, but as they step out of the doghouse, all that they have to walk on would be asphalt. To me, that's kind of animal cruelty. But our department has said it's not. So would this help with that issue?
Probably not, because what we talk about is the adequate space for the animal to run around. I agree.
On a hot asphalt?
I guess it would depend. I mean, yeah, if it was actually burning their pads, we might have a different.
I think we'd have to look at the outcome of that. So like, is the animal being affected by it? Because if the animal is being affected by it, then yes, I think for sure. But if the animal doesn't have burnt pads or there's water and there's no distress, then yeah, I'm with Sherry on that. I don't know that this would fall under there, but we could certainly, in our revised structure, I mean, there might be something in our revised structure section that may help in that specific example.
Yeah,
we did do a lot of revisions in here to our structure and how an animal's supposed to be kept as far as space. And
is there anything about temperature?
So in a vehicle, I believe, but not being outside.
Because there's a huge difference between having your animal in a doghouse outside where there's some trees and some shade and having them out in like an open, sunny yard or corner of a parking lot or driveway or something. Like, I feel like that's the kind of stuff that should be worked into the ordinance is animals should have an environment in which temperature does not exceed, whatever might be a safe temperature or does not fall below what might be a safe temperature.
So I think some of those issues may be addressed in the, we have the section for the vehicles. So like animals aren't supposed to be in the vehicles. And then as far as, they have to have a doghouse and it has to be adequate, but there isn't necessarily anything on temperature per se. Having fresh water.
Yeah. Well, they could have all the fresh water in the universe, but if they're in the middle of an asphalt, and they could have an adequately sized pen, but if they're in the middle of an asphalt lot with the sun beating down on a 95 or even an 85 degree day, that's just untenable.
If I could share something, Madam Chair, I will say I don't think we've ever had an asphalt case that was actually the dog's shelter, at least not that I can remember. Maybe a couple dogs tied out, but not like their place that they were living in.
Well, Sherry, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I turned in a work order last week for a house in Briarcliff that I've had several calls on, which is the case.
Okay.
And our animal control has sent me back, or sent Jean, who sent me the email, that the dog is okay. I would dispute that, but.
Yeah, I would like to see some specifics worked into it that address those kind of situations, or at least come up with a temperature range. Because I would assume hot asphalt, even on what would be a mild day, black asphalt gets really, really hot, and the surrounding air, or beating off it is really hot. So, I would love to hear some professional input on what is a safe temperature for a dog to exist in.
Yeah. So
something. Oh, I'm sorry. Go for it.
I was just saying, to give you some examples of what this is designed for, as I remember them now, we had one individual where the woman was 80 years old and was hoarding, and the dogs were living in such terrible conditions. So was she, that the one dog's back legs completely atrophied. That one was, I think, very clearly cruelty, but no one wants to take an 82-year-old woman who's struggling to care for herself to jail. So this gives us an opportunity to have sort of a hook to try to address some of that behavior without having to pursue more serious charges. We also had an individual where he had a number of puppies. They were visibly, obviously, covered in mange and living outside in November with no fur, basically. And he genuinely thought he was caring for his animals, refused to believe that it was mange, and then one of the puppies ended up dying overnight. And so this was a situation where the police, I don't think, were interested in getting involved because, he just was incredibly mistaken about the proper care for an animal, and it led to the death of an animal, but through no, I think, ill intent of his own, just a true lack of understanding. And so this gives us an ability to address some of those behaviors.
Does anyone want to offer? It seems like there may be some work here that folks would like to see done. Do you feel like direction for staff with some revisions that we'd like to entertain? Do you all feel like you've gotten that direction, Sherry and Crystal?
If I could, I guess
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I completely understand the idea behind like the temperature situation. I guess I definitely foresee, especially if we're talking about like temperature of pavement. I guess I foresee that really being difficult to enforce. I guess. I definitely understand it, but I guess it's, in practice, I'm trying to think about, I guess, police officers having to walk up to people they see like at AFFest walking around with their dogs with like a temperature gauge and then start. I don't know. I see it being very difficult. And then I also like think about, again, we've already brought up like, potentially like, homeless residents with dogs and such. I mean, are we therefore going to basically outlaw that if a person doesn't have housing to be able to have a dog in the summertime? I guess I see it being a very, very difficult thing that I'm not sure we are prepared to actually enforce.
Commissioner Nissen, I was referring more to like a permanent structure that is only asphalt with a doghouse. And, if the dog comes out of the doghouse, they're on that hot asphalt to have to either relieve themselves or eat or whatnot. So, at any rate.
That was my thought too, that, this would just refer to the dog's quarters, not for a dog that's out and about on a leash. That's a situation that can be easily alleviated by just moving to a different location. But when you have dogs that are outdoors in a pen, they may have a dog house and water available, but when it's 95 degrees and there's no shade, that's a really, really dangerous situation. Or when it's 20 degrees and they're just, it can get really cold, and no matter what's going on, unless you have a heated environment in that doghouse, it could be really dangerous.
So, Madam Chair, if I could speak to that, I will say that I share Commissioner Denson's concerns. One, I'm not entirely sure how we could measure asphalt pavement. We certainly could prescribe by ordinance, if that was the will of the commission, to say that an improper pen shall be one that only has asphalt or only has concrete. So that would be an easier way to do it. I think that, Crystal and I can speak to the fact that animals in this community are regularly kept out in all weather. We had one dog that, then this one was a potential cruelty case where it was out in the snow and couldn't walk. But everything else, we see animals in all the heat, all the cold, all the rain. And as long as they have a dog house or some sort of other shelter, that is currently legally sufficient. I think if it were to be changed to basically require that animals need to be indoors during certain temperatures or certain types of weather, I think we would have a drastic increase in violations.
And I'm not sure anybody's. I haven't heard that. I guess what I'm suggesting is, if you're like Commissioner Link is saying, if you're outdoors and your doghouse isn't, or the pen isn't underneath any sort of shade tree or anything, there can't be just all asphalt. The dog has to walk on that in this 100-degree weather.
It sounds like including some language, particularly called like naming asphalt as like a unacceptable condition under this ordinance, might be a resolution that captures some of what you and Commissioner Link were raising, if that would be amenable to you.
Or that would certainly help.
or a mixture. I mean, of maybe, I don't know, just something that we're.
I would, yeah. I mean, I would say prohibit asphalt as the flooring. I mean, and that could be alleviated by, they could throw down some AstroTurf. But also a clause mandating shade when temperatures are above 80 degrees or something. I mean, that can be alleviated by throwing up a tarp. Goes a long way to just step under a shade. The temperature drops dramatically. Whether it's a
Would language
or a
adding
tarp.
those two things be acceptable to everyone? I would agree that shade and prohibiting asphalt and concrete as the sole surfaces in an enclosure sounds all right.
I was going to suggest possibly because it's on 415C that talks about the shelter areas. Can we just add something about protections and inclement weather? Right, because sometimes of the year you're probably not going to need shade. It's not going to be a big deal, but I guess I feel that would give the police and if we have a inclement weather warning out that talks about temperatures are 105 degrees or temperatures are 20 degrees, and then people have not ensured that their animals are protected in that inclement weather, and that covers anything, right? Not just a temperature, that covers anything, hail or, yeah. Is that something we could possibly do that would cover this?
And this is just my thought, Sherry, is I think we would probably have to exclude livestock because I don't know how we would enforce that with livestock. I mean, they're always out. Generally speaking, most people have a lean-to or something, but it's kind of the animal's choice if they go under there. And then I think we would also have to exclude shelters because our housing is all concrete, as well as the Humane Society's housing is all concrete.
I mean, I think asphalt is more the issue because of the extreme temperatures that it reaches. And at your facility, they're under a roof, right? It's constantly shaded.
Right, but so would a doghouse. So I don't know if that would be an argument, Sherry.
But the doghouse is not large enough for them to walk around in. The doghouse is typically just they go in and lay down there.
Would folks feel okay with, Tim's suggestion about the inclement weather protections? Because I do agree that does cover a range of things and is more specified to not necessarily the conditions inside a indoor facility, but, someone that's actually exposed to the elements, which could include dangerously hot asphalt.
I mean, I would just like to prohibit asphalt as a surface in general, knowing that even in, seemingly mild temperatures, it can get really hot. And it just, the reflection off that hot asphalt, it may only be 80 degrees outside, but 12 inches, 14 inches from that asphalt, it could be 110.
So if I could say something, Madam Chair, I think the only concern about inclement weather, and this is an argument that I hear a lot from defendants, is that you're requiring them to change things with their shelter based on weather conditions. And what we hear a lot is, well, you were at my shelter before and it was fine, or you came and looked at my property before and it was fine. And, the point is, well, it might have been fine on a wonderful, beautiful 70-degree day in spring, but it is not fine now that it's storming or that it's 30 degrees. And I think that consistency in requirements is probably easier on the defendants in the long run. But it's certainly up to you all as to how you would like to craft it.
Any additional thoughts from others? I feel like we have a variety of different ideas kind of in circulation, but if someone wants to put forward a synthesis or a single idea that we can deliberate or move forward on, I would welcome that.
Maybe, Chair, if you don't mind, maybe
Go for it.
maybe something to the effect that if an enclosure shall not consist solely of asphalt, that might be the way to fix it.
Yeah.
I like that. Any objections, Commissioners Denson or Davenport?
Can we add? No,
But let me make clear, I agree with Melissa on this. I'm not including the doghouse in this. I mean,
Right.
yeah. So.
Okie dokie. If we want to, perhaps when we return to this, it seems like we're going to have to give this a second go. Just take a look and make sure whatever language Crystal and Sherry bring forward is amenable to everyone. But does that sound like sufficient direction for what we'd like to include? Crystal, Sherry?
Yes, I think that is.
Okay.
And what we'll do for process, Chair, is we'll develop a gray shaded copy based on all y'all's changes that the GOC's made. So I know we're running short on time here. We're trying to save at least 10 minutes to start short-term rentals. So Crystal, I don't know if you think we can still get through it, but you know, we're going to bring back that draft. We'll send it in advance of the next GOC meeting, then y'all can talk about it one more time as well.
Maybe I have 12 minutes. So the next section, 4135, is the abandonment of domestic animals and livestock. I mean, essentially, it's just you can't knowingly abandon a domestic animal or livestock within the county. Willingly do such abandonment, and this way we can actually do a citation on a county level for abandonment at this point. Any questions?
Just one quick question.
Yep.
Just the legal jargon. You can't abandon an animal within the boundaries of Athens-Clarke County, but if someone catches me knowingly that I took my cat to Oglethorpe County and abandoned her, can you elaborate on that?
I think Sherry,
I would never do that to my cat.
Yeah.
I think that would be up to Oglethorpe
Okay.
to press charges, but Sherry, I'll let you.
No, I can speak to that. So the answer is the crime occurs in the county where the jurisdiction has. So even though you may have developed the intent in Athens-Clarke County, I'd say that the crime occurred in Oglethorpe. Oglethorpe doesn't have any ordinances. I think there is a state law on abandonment, but I don't even recall whether it addresses cats. For some reason, I want to say it's only dogs, but in either case, it wouldn't be something we would make the decision.
And I believe you're right, Sherry. I think it did address just dogs, which is why we changed added the language to domestic animal or livestock.
Yep.
Any other questions on that one? Okay. So the next section, 4136, injury to, damage by, or death of a domestic animal. So just to give you a quick example, right now, if a dog bites you, we can have a violation of running at large. We can have a violation of no inoculation, but there's not really any violation for the dog bite actually happen, for the injury. So this section helps us so that we can actually have citation for and a violation for people letting their dogs or cats in certain circumstances off their property, killing or injuring domestic livestock, injuring or hurting people, and then this would be essentially like an add-on violation where people are held at a more higher standard because their dog now has gotten out and bitten somebody. It also covers an owner responsibly properly disposing of his or her animal after death, so that you can't just throw it in the on the side of the road. You'd have to bag it properly and throw it in the proper disposal or bury it. And then also, if somebody were to hit somebody's animal, they would need to notify the person that owned the animal or animal services. So that way, hopefully if it's injured, we can get there and recover it before it's deceased, if it ends up being deceased, that we can recover the body. So hopefully some owners will get some closure. And I don't know, Sherry, did you have anything to add on that? I know this was
No, but it's shockingly common where we have situations where we're dealing with classified dogs where maybe the dog is vaccinated and sometimes even on leash and causes dramatic bite wounds. And so this is just a way for us to try to help victims when that happens and address the behavior.
Did anyone have any questions on this section?
I think Commissioner Link, did you have a question?
Oh, no, sorry. I never took my hand down from before.
Okay. All good.
Okay, and then, and then the last is just limitations on ownership. So while we would love to have probation be part of every sentence, especially with, you know, the conviction of a cruelty, abuse, or neglect or animal fighting, it doesn't generally happen. So that would assist us in being able to keep people from owning animals that had those felony charges. We have in there for 5 years, but that was kind of our consensus. And it includes livestock as well. A is just domestic or wildlife, and then B is livestock, because there are people who abuse, obviously, livestock as well as domestic animals. And I don't know, Sherry, if you had anything else on that.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a relatively unique code section, but we constantly get asked, you know, well, did you give the animals back? Like why would you let the animals go back to an owner who abused them? And the problem is we in many cases don't have a lot of tools at our disposal to keep that from happening. So this is our attempt to try to address that.
Did anybody have any questions in this section?
Chair, I think you're muted.
Oh, I was just saying, it looks like we're all good. I don't see the hands raised.
Okay. So I think that is it.
Okay.
Awesome. So it sounds like we have some points we'd like to return to. Perhaps it makes the most sense to keep the ordinance intact, like together, so that we can revisit particularly the dog and cat licensing program. But there was multiple points throughout that I think that we could take a look at some revised language on. Do you all, Sherry and Crystal, feel like you've got adequate direction from us on everything?
Yes, I believe so. Thank you all very much.
Also, yeah, thank you. I guess folks did want to take a look at the draft survey ahead of sending it of our next meeting. It doesn't sound like we'll have much feedback, but maybe for someone to flag if they would like for us to revisit it as a group before sending it out to everyone. Does that make sense? Does that sound good?
The only thing I would say is, you know, obviously we're not going to have the input back related to licensing for the next meeting. So would y'all like us to pull out that licensing section in the draft that we bring forward to y'all for the next meeting, or how would you like us to handle that? Because that's what we heard earlier.
That does make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I mean,
I agree.
I don't know about everybody else, but I feel comfortable going ahead and sending a recommendation to the mayor and commission, and just trusting that staff can take in those few changes as long as we pull out the licensing component.
And my notes here,
that?
I just want to confirm some of the suggested changes that we had to remind everyone kind of like what that would look like. Effectively, that would be changing the language around the asphalt being the sole surface in an enclosure. Did we feel okay about the transfer in of like dogs, cats, and rabbits in public, like retail parking lots, things like that? Some of the suggested changes there, I believe we landed on leaving the language as written here in the ordinance, as long as it pertains to sales and not giveaways. So there's those 2 points. I know Mike was kind of unclear about that second one. Or there's anything else that we said that we would like to consider revising?
I'm not, Chair, I won't hold it up because of that.
Okay. Well, I guess with those two revisions, would you all like to see the, I guess that single revision, would we like to go ahead and pass this out of committee with the exception of the cat and dog licensing section?
I'll make a motion to send this as a recommendation for approval to the full mayor and commission with the changes to the asphalt component and with pulling out the licensing section.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Great, so this is moving on up. Great job, everyone. Thank you so much, Crystal, Sherry, Josh. I guess in this time that we have left, quick temperature check. Our intention today was to go ahead and get a high-level overview, I guess you could say, of the charge related to short-term rental regulations for the county. Do you all want to take a quick 10 minutes and take a look at that today, or should we hold that for September?
Can I say something, Chair? I noticed Sherry has sent us. I noticed Sherry has sent us an email that I haven't had time to look at, and maybe just if we could take the time to look at that and then take it up at their next meeting, I guess, because it sounds like what she's written is a bit pertinent to this whole discussion.
Yes, it was very helpful. Other thoughts on that? Do folks want to get some time to sort of take a peek at what Sherry has prepared for us, just so that we come into the next meeting feeling ready?
Yes, that sounds good.
Yeah. I didn't even see Sherry's email. I was looking at the Atlanta ordinance. But I mean, could we take a minute to just kind of voice some of our personal concerns and what we're hearing from constituents about this and the direction we might want to go, as like a prelude to, just to give staff like an idea of where we might be going?
Yeah, if you've got something like that you want to share real quick, Commissioner Links, that would be cool.
Yeah, well, I do. And, you know, I'm thinking about the fact that we're kind of a unique community in that we do have a pretty transient population. We have a very seasonal population. And, you know, my concern with this ordinance is assuring that there are opportunities for people who live in the community to utilize their property in this way. But without these, you know, companies or outside investors coming in and taking properties off the market, that could be homes for people. So, you know, I'd like to see kind of a tiered system where there are fewer restrictions on short-term rentals on those who actually live in the community.
My understanding from the it may have been the Atlanta ordinance is that it does have some kind of it kind of acts to that end somewhat.
Yeah, I think it does.
And I think you have to have a property that is a homestead in the county in order for you to also license the second residence as a Airbnb, or license that residence as an Airbnb. Yeah,
the Atlanta ordinance does take that into consideration. Yeah, and I think that's definitely a direction I'd want to go. You know, we might want to tier it in a way. I'd like to look more into the Atlanta ordinance.
Well, one thing we can do as staff chair and Commissioner Link is have a short presentation next meeting about some of the details of the Atlanta ordinance, as
that
it
would
was
be helpful,
mentioned.
Yeah,
it was mentioned by the mayor in his charge to the GOC is something he wanted y'all to look at.
Yeah, I mean, we are different from Atlanta in that we are very much, almost a resort type community in the seasonality of these things. So, you know, we might want to tweak ours a little bit differently than Atlanta. And we also have a pretty significant population of professors and stuff who end up going on sabbatical and being out of town for long periods of time, or, you know, having complete summer homes. So I think we need to really tailor an ordinance that is specific to the needs of our community and with the consideration of, you know, kind of the seasonal flow of the way things go around here.
Maybe there's another college town that has some examples.
Yeah, it might be worth looking at some other college towns and what they've come up with.
That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other feedback or suggestions for staff for information we'd like to see when we approach this topic at the next meeting?
Yeah, the one thing I remember back when GOC took this on back in before the pandemic kicked in, and we kind of didn't fall through it because we weren't sure what was going to happen with state legislature. One thing that's going to be absolutely required if we do anything at all is going to be that we're going to have to get one of these third-party vendors to be able to pull records on the short-term rentals. And I know that at one time we had a presentation on that, I think from the purchasing department, on some research they had done. I want to say that there was an RFQ that was drafted and sent out. So if we can go ahead and get information on that and get those things sent back out to us and have a presentation on that, because that's going to be no matter what ordinance structure we go for, that's going to be a required element. So I'd like us to go ahead and be prepared on that part.
Yeah, good idea.
We could definitely dust that off. Good call.
All right, anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, motion to adjourn. Do I hear a second? A second from Commissioner Link? Okay. I got a motion from Commissioner Hamby, second from Commissioner Link. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, with that, have a wonderful evening, everyone, and we will see you back here soon.
All right.
Thank
Good night,
you.
y'all. Thank you.
Good night.